Hey everyone, and thanks for listening to another episode of the Future of Data Security. Today I'm speaking with Yash Kosaraju, CISO at Sendbird. Yash, thanks for chatting with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I'm curious about your transition from security consulting to building security programs at some hypergrowth companies. I saw at Twilio, Snick, some pretty cool names out there. Can you give us a bit of a backgrounder?
Yeah, so I did consulting right out of college for about a year or so. Consulting was really fun, did learn a lot, but the aspect that was missing for me was the fixing of issues that were found during the tests we would do. And that's what led me to transition to product companies doing security in-house. And the other fact is finding issues at some point becomes easier than fixing them. The on paper solution for every issue is seldom the issue that gets implemented. There are a lot of ifs and buts and a lot of caveats. So working with engineering teams, finding the optimal solution, that's always a challenge and that's always fun to do. So that's what kept me within in-house security teams.
And can you share a little bit about your first 90 days at Sendbird? How was that? And what types of challenges do you tend to see when you join new companies?
Sendbird was a unique company, or is a unique company. It's an amalgamation of both American and Korean cultures. I was the first CISO they hired. So, in a lot of ways, my first 90 days was very unique. I spent a lot of time getting to know the people, understanding the culture of the company, how the two different cultures worked together in harmony within the company, the decisions that were made historically, what was missing, what was taken into account, understanding product and engineering priorities, and also working to get to know the people both on a personal and professional level. Because again, the culture is different. People are not what you would expect in a US based startup, right? So spending time getting to know people, the culture, also towards the end, working on a few quick wins just to build credibility within the company.
We were talking about different topics earlier, and you mentioned zero trust. And I think you said, what is zero trust? Because at the end of the day, you actually need to trust something. What's wrong with the zero trust approach or all this talk about zero trust from your perspective?
So there's nothing wrong with the approach. I think it's a great approach. My point is zero trust is a very good marketing term, but it's a misnomer. You're not eliminating trust, you're just moving it instead of trusting the entire network. And I think that was the historical context, right? Like you shouldn't trust an entity because it's coming from a known network and inherently granted permissions. You're in this idea of zero trust, you're moving the trust from a network to an identity or a device's health or authorization policy or other things. So there is still some trust to it. It's just not zero trust. The goal is more explicit and continuously verified trust.
One thing I'm curious about in this same line of thinking is what's happening with, of course, Gen AI, and soon we will be trusting machines more so than humans. Do you have any thoughts to share on this evolution and how is data security evolving with this massive AI super cycle we're in?
You're right. It is a massive super cycle. AI is now pretty much writing a lot of code for people. It's taking actions on the back end. So having that verification step and having those logs and being able to see what the AI is doing is critical in being able to trust something, right? You cannot trust something if you don't see what it's doing for you. So that's going to be the big step. So Sendbird in its product is also building those verification pipelines, making sure our customers can see the decisions the AI is making on the back end and sort of make those tweaks to make sure it's in line with the expectation. I think that's going to be the next big thing of like, yes, AI will make decisions, but it has to be verifiable when that need comes.
Yeah, that's interesting. I was looking at your website earlier with all the AI features and capabilities you can bring to customer service. What would you say are the biggest things you need to put in place for? I think you were starting to speak about explainability. What are the biggest aspects of, rolling out these agentic AI features on top of existing products?
So, given Sendbird's more of an enterprise company, there are a lot of enterprise security features that we focus on, right? Like authentication, multi-factor, single sign-on, role-based access control. So, all those are your traditional enterprise level feature sets. On top of those, when you're talking agentic AI, you also have to figure out what LLMs are you using. We have, for example, we have contractual obligations with our LLM providers that our data and our customers' data is not used for training their generic LLM models, right? So that data security is paramount for us. And on top of it, we make sure that the LLMs that we are using are trained to do what we are providing to the customer in a very robust way, right? Like you're providing customer service. So being able to read from the customer's knowledge base and work as intended, that's another big thing. And the other piece we're building into the product is feedback loops. So a customer can come in, configure Sendbird's AI agent as a customer service feature on their website, and then go back into our dashboard and see the requests that have come in, the resolutions that were made, and then sort of see which ones were right, which ones were wrong, work with us to tweak them so that they're making the right decisions at the end of the day.
The market is welcoming AI capabilities with great excitement, but often in large enterprises, people have more questions than excitements. What would you say are the top things that large enterprise are concerned about? You mentioned the model, what model, things like data retentions. Can you run us through the top questions that are important to answer when you serve large enterprises?
Yeah, the first question that most enterprises ask us is like, is our data being used to train your models? So that's pretty much a question every large enterprise asks us in the very beginning of the sales cycle. And then there's data retention, there's PII scrubbing within the data. It's how do we delete data after we terminate the contract with you as our vendor? So the path you see or the sort of focus area you see here is largely on data, because to use a AI or agentic AI platform to its fullest capabilities, you have to give it a lot of data, you have to give it a lot of access, and that's what the enterprises are very cautious on, how they secure that data and who has access to them, both from the LLM provider and both from the AI agent vendor that's providing those capabilities on top of the LLM.
I'm sensitive because of our line of work about data loss through prompt and data loss through file upload or inappropriate access of a model to a data source. Where do you see the most optimal area in that whole pipeline to address this sensitive data issue? Should it be at the provider layer? Should it be at the LLM layer? Should it be even the client that is responsible for ensuring they're not injecting sensitive data inside the system? What are your thoughts on this emerging area?
I think that would eventually become a shared responsibility model across the whole system, spread between like the LLM provider who would have contractual agreements with the vendor providing the capability, stating that the LLM provider doesn't use the customers or the end users' data for training generic models, right? So that's one place. And then the vendors, such as Sendbird, who's providing the agentic AI platform as a service, they would be responsible in sort of making sure the right data is sent to the LLM for training. And on the other side of the spectrum, you have the customer who's using these platforms to have some sort of internal policies or safeguards so that the right data is being sent and not sensitive data that shouldn't be sent to this particular vendor is being sent. So it's across the board.
Yeah, it's interesting because in that B2B to B2C chain, there's a lot of different ways that sensitive data can be injected in the system. Any other thoughts on the Gen AI adoption and some of the emerging security risks that are often old risks making a trip back to the forefront?
I would say we're focusing too much on the risk. We should also look at the upsides of using Gen AI, both within security and within general productivity as well. With any new technology, you have risks. It's about balancing those risks with the productivity gains that are made.
Okay. I'd like to switch gears a little bit and talk about what it's like to, manage a company across different time zones, many different spoken languages, such as Sendbird. How do you manage that as a CISO? What are some of the challenges in managing and building that security culture?
I think there are multiple layers to it. One would be just building personal connections across all the other leaders within company. So I make it a priority to travel to Korea, where a large chunk of our engineering leaders are based, sharing a meal and taking time to understand the local culture, the local food, plays a very important role. There is something about going to them, eating their food, and sort of sitting down with them that builds a certain level of trust that you cannot really build over a video call. So that's one aspect of like building relations across the company. The other is building an approachable security team where you're not building a security team that's more of a police force, but the message you're trying to send out is come to us and we'll help solve the problems that you're facing. Once you get that message out and you start acting to that message, it becomes a collaboration across the company with the security team versus people bypassing security controls because they don't like working with the security team.
We were talking earlier about the human firewall, and obviously, different culture, different employees moving at different speeds. Are you finding that a lot of employees have creative ways to, try new tools, work around security controls? There's shadow AI out there, which is a big team. I think your approach is bang on. You have to be approachable, part of the solution. But anything else you can say around the human firewall, this explosion of shadow AI we're dealing with?
I think that that problem has existed even before shadow AI, right? Like a lot of people will bypass security controls that are put in place. And the key here becomes asking what problem that the individual is trying to solve and the reason why they had to bypass the control. 99% of times you'll find that they bypass the control because they're trying to get their job done efficiently, not because they wanted to break something that another team had set in place. So the aspect we focus on is when somebody breaks a policy or a control, instead of blaming the individual, we try and understand the problem that they're trying to solve and then work with them to solve it in the right way, in the secure way. And that there's two things, right? One, it makes sure that the individual will first come to you before they start breaking controls. And the other, it tells you how your controls can be broken. So your users are the best feedback loop you can have to the security of your controls.
More from an operational standpoint, I'm curious how AI tools and perhaps new approaches made your job more efficient. What are you seeing are some of the key use cases where, in security as the CISO, I'm really getting a savings here, saving time. I don't need as much people. What are some of the key use cases you've experienced that are effective?
I don't think there has been a case where I can say I don't need as many people. There's been a lot of cases where I can say using AI has made my team more efficient. It's not just generative AI, it's like all types of AI, right? Like one of the big use cases we're seeing is natural language processing. If you look at the history of incident response teams, a big chunk of their time would go into learning the query language of all the log aggregation tools. The big shift we're now seeing is being able to ask questions from these logs in plain English. If it's like, show me when Yash has logged into his laptop over the last 90 days, instead of writing queries, right? So that saves time during an incident. You don't have to care about syntax. It's easy to write, it's easy to ramp up new people. Every time you switch vendors, you're not spending a good chunk of time learning their new query language. That's been a big trend we're seeing. The other trend has been in sort of vendor questionnaires. There are a lot of AI based solutions out there that look at your previous vendor security questionnaires that your company has filled out, ingest that data, learn from that data, and then sort of fill out the newer questionnaire. So that's something we are experimenting and implementing as well, where we give that data to the AI, it fills out the questionnaire, and then I have my GRC lead review those. And instead of spending half a day filling it out, she now spends maybe an hour or so reviewing what has been filled out and send it along.
I'm interested in that. I'll ask you later which ones you've tried. That's a big, big pain for everyone. In terms of like, we hear a lot about an AI risk analyst and we're gonna replace people in the SOC. Is that all exaggeration, or do you think there's a point in the future where we're gonna see that level of automation?
At this point today, I think it's exaggeration. AI does a great job at augmenting what you do, sort of helping you do things faster. I just don't think it's at a point where it can do everything on its own, start to finish, without human oversight.
I want to go back to your experience with so many great startups. Can you share with us some patterns that you've seen as companies grow from 0 to 50, 50 to 100? What are some of the pain areas that every startup should pay close attention to as they grow and scale for security?
I think one thing that's often overlooked is internal employee authentication and securing sort of the enterprise, right? Things like single sign-on, laptop security, the life cycle of your assets within the company. That's something that IT teams often take on fairly late, and those are easy things to do and high value. So that's something I wish more companies did from the get-go. Like a very simple thing would be having multi-factor on all of your systems. Could be using Google Auth, if not a full-blown single sign-on solution, right? Like those things are inherently provided by, say, Google or Microsoft, depending on what you're using, and those are easy fixes.
Any other things that you saw during your vast tenure that might be worthwhile to mention?
There are a lot of things that I can point to, but some things that sort of repeat as a pattern is security being an afterthought. And I get where people are coming from, where like in the initial stages, you need to make revenue, you need to sell your product. And security isn't something that makes money, it's something that slows people down. So finding that balance of like how much is too much and how little is too little, and finding that middle ground where you are fixing security issues, but also not slowing down the growth trajectory of the company. And that's not a very easy problem to solve because it's almost like an art than a science.
I found that often if it's something like, SOC 2 Type 2, ISO 27001, it's easier to sell because that has a tremendous marketing appeal to people. Did you see the same thing as well?
You're right. A lot of times, if you tie a control back to a compliance framework, it's easier done than saying this is an actual security control with non-compliance value. But I take issue with that approach because then you're doing security for compliance. I would rather do security for the sake of securing the data you have for earning the trust of your customers, and then compliance comes as a byproduct of that.
The perfect answer. You guys do a lot of work with, customer support, customer assistance. The way I was looking at your website earlier, it really sort of shapes up and looks like eventually you'll have sort of an AI customer support rep or an avatar. Is that kind of the direction of the company at this point where eventually someone could hire Sendbird and have a virtual support employee?
They can do that today. I wouldn't call it a virtual support employee, but like the AI agents that Sendbird is building, you can sort of embed that into your website, create a whole support ecosystem where the Sendbird AI agent talks to your customers, understands their issue, and can even take backend actions on their behalf based on how you configure them. And then you can have your human agent sort of have oversight over what's happening and then make sure things are being done the right way.
I'm curious if you've seen anything similar to this in terms of new user interface like avatars, AI-based interaction, and cybersecurity. Are you starting to see that across different tools or vendors?
Well, most security vendors now have some sort of AI within them, right? It just depends on like what they're doing and how well they can integrate AI into their systems. A lot of them come up with like, here's the bot that can answer questions for you or can take actions for you on their end, right? So a lot of them are coming up with those.
But you haven't seen anything yet, like an avatar that could join a Teams call or something sophisticated like that?
Not yet,
Okay.
no.
I'm curious about your experience and what you could share with the audience in terms of if somebody were new, starting their career, or even a younger version of yourself, what would be some key pieces of advice you could share for that new person, that younger Yash?
One piece of advice that stood the test of time is to build a network of people who are doing security. Uh, one thing people miss out on is from asking help, right? There's so much value to be gained in networking with people, asking for help, understanding how different folks have worked in their careers. It's a wealth of information. Everyone's friendly, everyone's open to sharing it. All you have to do is ask. And the sort of the second piece of advice in today's age that I would give is embrace AI, learn AI, see how it can make your life easy, plus also having that experience will make you stand out from the rest of the competition.
Fantastic, Yash. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have today. But before we wrap up, is there some place where people that want to follow your work should go? LinkedIn, Twitter, etc.
LinkedIn works great. We also have a security section on Sendbird for blogs that my team keeps posting to, so check those out. If you want to reach out to me, LinkedIn messages are open and I'm happy to connect.
Okay, amazing. Thank you for coming on the show, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you.